that you're here. If you're watching, we're going to have the most awesome session ever here with Andrew Jones. We're going to talk about skills that you need to get into data science or to have a successful career in data science. So definitely bring all of your questions.
In the last 5 years or so, I worked for companies like Amazon, and then did some consulting for Sony PlayStation. And then in March of last year, I decided to give up consulting and create an online course for getting into data science. And the primary reason that I did that was during my time at Amazon and Sony, I had the very fortunate role of interviewing and screening hundreds of data science candidates, and I continually saw this pattern coming through, where there seemed to be this disconnect between what aspiring data scientists are learning and the requirements that hiring managers are really looking for, and all that means at the end of the day is that it becomes a very inefficient process for hiring managers trying to find the right person. But it also means there's a lot of rejection and heartbreak for candidates who are coming in thinking that they've learned the things they need to learn, and hiring managers saying, well, that doesn't really fit with what we need. So I went about trying to create something that would bridge that gap. But instead of this just being my opinion and my opinion alone, which is often the case when you're trying to learn something and you're going to YouTube or you're on Medium, it's just people telling you what they think you should learn. I wanted to be a little bit smarter than that, because as a data scientist, right, as a bit of an analogy for data science, you would never take a sample of one in an experiment and think that that was going to tell you something useful, right? So I went out and I talked to hundreds of leaders and hiring managers and recruiters in the field of data science and analytics. I talked to them about skills and tools and techniques and attitudes and education, and what is it that makes, what's the difference between a good data scientist and a great data scientist? What's the difference between a data science candidate who gets the role versus one who continually misses out? And I distilled all of that down into Data Science Infinity. So in terms of data science itself, so I think at a very high level, some of the things that you need. So you do need some coding, and I advise learning SQL as the first step in getting into data science. And the reason for that is that while it's not maybe as sexy as Python or R, it is solving business problems for 99% of businesses still. A lot of these businesses, even I'll tell you, Amazon, Sony PlayStation, they still store most of their data in relational databases, and they need people who can extract those key business insights so they can make the right decisions quickly. And a lot of that just comes down to knowing how to use SQL well. So I definitely recommend that. Then you'll probably want to learn a more traditional sort of programming language, and I advise learning Python, but I'm not going to get into the Python versus R debate. I learned R first, and then I learned Python purely because it synced a little bit better during my time at PlayStation with the engineering teams that they had. People will tell you that you can't be a data scientist unless you've studied linear algebra and you've read this book and you've read that book. And it's true that you need those skills. You absolutely need those skills, and you will pick those up. But don't be scared away by that. Learn them as you build things like that. Build projects and build applications using machine learning models, and learn those things as you apply them, turning the dials and pushing the buttons and seeing what happened and why it happened, because that's so much more enjoyable. But you're also learning in a way which you can then intuitively explain to other people. I think is a huge part of it. Machine learning, as I've mentioned, that's huge. That's a huge part of data science. Everyone wants to learn it, and it is key, but don't think that you need to learn every possible machine learning algorithm under the sun, because there's 4 or 5 machine learning algorithms that will solve 95% of business problems that even require a machine learning solution.
You said there are 5.
I think things like linear regression, decision trees, random forests, and then for, say, classification problems, you probably just want logistic regression, again, decision trees, random forests, and maybe something like k-nearest neighbors. They sort of all work in slightly different ways that give you a really good coverage of how you can manipulate data in a machine learning sense to solve a problem. So don't start by thinking that you need to know more than that. Obviously, there are a lot more, and there are some really cool ones like, say, XGBoost or even progressing further into deep learning, don't think that just because people tell you that that's all the rage that you need to do that straight away. Focus on the fundamentals, get a really good understanding of those algorithms and how they can actually solve problems. And when you're building out projects for your portfolio, using these things, but illustrating how you can use them to add value. Because when a hiring manager or a recruiter is looking through your portfolio, they don't want to just see screeds of technical code. They want to see how you've solved a problem. And if you use something that's really effective, but maybe other people would say it was simple, and then who cares? You've solved the problem. So that's something which I advise, don't get bogged down by all of these, fancy machine learning algorithms. Learn a smaller subset of algorithms, but learn them really well, understand what's going on under the hood. There's so much to data science than technical skills. And there's a huge, part of what makes a great data scientist, in my experience, are those softer skills. So the best data scientists that I've ever worked with, they're not the ones who are smartest by, the definition that we would say smart is, like they're really good at maths or really good at coding. They know that stuff, but they're the ones that can think about a business problem and, in a really sensible way, think about the appropriate solution. Depending on other factors, they're the ones that can communicate ideas to stakeholders in a way that it doesn't just end up getting put on the shelf because nobody trusted it. Because data science, we're here to solve problems. We're not here to create new problems, I guess, or we're here to accelerate decision making, not slow it down or get in the way of it. And I wanted to try and bridge that gap by making sure people learn the right things. So the things that hiring managers, broadly speaking, want, and then that people learn in the right way with a real focus on intuition and understanding, but also application. Because if you're learning with a focus on application, it's much more enjoyable, but that also translates quite well to getting a role, because you'll start being able to build up a portfolio of, varied projects, which when you go out to an interview or you're talking to a recruiter, that's a really valuable thing to have, especially when you don't have a whole lot of work experience. That's what you're relying on a lot of the time. So having a real good focus on application is really important, I think. And then with Data Science Infinity, I guess the other thing which sets it apart from the vast majority of other online courses is that when I first created it, there was only one plan available, and that comes with unlimited guidance and support from me. So if you get stuck on a problem or you get stuck trying to understand something, you can just ask me and I'll be right there, dedicated to, support you in figuring that out. Like I say, I sit in the little Data Science Infinity cave all day, and I'm dedicated to helping my students. If you want a resume review or you want project reviews, I'm right there. I can't talk about it too much because he's not started yet, but I have one of my students in the course who's just landed a role, and he got much more money than he even asked for, because we worked together and we figured out exactly, what are they looking for in a candidate, and he was able to go to them and sort of showcase himself in the best light. And I think that's where I really want to help people, because I've been fortunate to have that experience in big companies, and I've had that experience of interviewing people and seeing where they fall short. And I think I'm quite fortunate in being able to sort of pull those two together, and that's where I want to try and help people as much as I can.
This was from Joe. So for the algorithms, should we memorize the specific formulas that make up the algorithms, or be able to describe them in plain English?
It's not a bad thing to be able to memorize the specific formulas. If you can do that, then that's awesome. I certainly can't. But the way that I try and teach is I almost think about it backwards. So I try and teach with a full focus on intuition. So when I will introduce what the formula looks like, but then I will replace all the Greek symbols with words, because that not only does that make sense to me as a smaller side. I don't come from a mathematical background. I didn't study maths or machine learning or computer science at university. I studied marketing and psychology. So for me, throughout my career, as I've built further into data science, I've struggled with the mathematical side of it. So I've always had to take everything that I learn and work really hard and turn that into something intuitive. But the bonus about learning something intuitive and almost putting it into words is that you build up a really, really powerful skill for a data scientist, which is the ability to explain that to somebody from marketing or the product team who doesn't come from a technical background, and they won't know. If you give them a formula, that means nothing to them. And your job as a data scientist is to get your application or your report or whatever it is that you've built for them, you've got to get that in front of them, and then they've got to tick that box and say, yes, I'm happy for that to go to my customers. And if you can't, then it's just going to sit on the shelf and you won't add any value. And if you don't add value, you won't move up in your career. So it's kind of like a longer term view that I have, that if you can learn with a focus on intuition rather than strictly mathematical formulas, which are obviously still important because they are what they are, that breeds a really powerful skill for data science.
All right, next question from Jose. If you would like to learn data science from scratch once again, we just gave you a clean slate in your brain, how would you start?
I would just learn I would take Data Science Infinity, obviously. No. I think the key thing, and a lot of people talk about this, but it's true. Don't try and learn by learning all of the code at once or all of the maths at once. Make sure you stop, you learn a little bit, and then try and put it into place with a really simple project, even if that's something like building a game of tic-tac-toe using lists in Python. That really, and for me, and everybody's different, so it's not a strict way of doing things, but for me, things sink in so much better when you can just apply them, and it doesn't have to be in this huge project which you could then go and tell a recruiter about, but just these mini projects which help you pull a few concepts together and see them in action. Because for me, just learning mathematical formula after mathematical formula, it doesn't do anything. It bounces off my brain, whereas putting them in practice does help. So I think always have an eye on projects, and they don't have to be portfolio projects. They can just be mini projects that just tie a few skill sets together. So I think, broadly speaking, that's what I would do. But then again, I sort of came from it from that angle, because I didn't come from a data science degree. I just sort of came into it from, like, I've told people the story before. I got into analytics, I guess it was called, when I came into the industry, because I played indoor cricket with a guy who was the manager of a marketing analytics team, and I just graduated, and I talked to him, and he said, you should apply for a job, and I managed to get the job, and I learned SAS coding, and I just blew my mind that you could use linear regression to predict something, or logistic regression to predict who was going to churn from a business. I thought this was just like voodoo magic, and I've just kept working away.
Cool. So what's the duration of the course as it stands now? I know you're going to keep adding content. Yes.
So it's a tricky question to answer. I get asked this all the time, but because everyone has a different amount of time on their hands, if you know what I mean. There's no, so when first things first, when you sign up to Data Science Infinity, you have unlimited access. There's no end point for it. You don't have 3 months, we don't have a year. And I purposefully did that because I don't think there's a sales pitch that I'm comfortable with saying, become a data scientist in 6 weeks or learn data science in 3 months. It's not, it's a journey. It's not a destination. It's sort of a longer term journey. But especially with the premium plan where you get the unlimited guidance and support, it's all about your journey. I just want to be on your journey with you.
Who do you admire most in the data science community, and why?
Oh man, there's a lot of people. There's people that I sort of have become to know quite well over the last year. So people like Tom Ives, who a lot of you follow. So he's not only very skilled at what he does, and he knows a lot, but he's putting a lot of his time and effort into helping people, and he's very passionate about understanding where people are coming from and helping them with that side of it. So I admire him a lot in terms of, for that side of things. There's also like Ken G, Danny Ma. These are just fantastic guys that you have to be listening to because they know their stuff. And then more broadly speaking, I guess, somebody like Hadley Wickham, who, if you know R coding, he's just like a god. He created the tidyverse, and I don't code so much in R anymore, but when I did, he's from New Zealand as well. So originally, so I always had a soft spot for Hadley Wickham. I can't even think of any. I'm probably missing like everybody that's amazing in data science.
Awesome. I just felt like I should ask you that. Okay. Devashish is asking, what are some pitfalls for someone who's starting in the data science field?
Yeah, kind of similar to what we've said already, I guess, jumping too quickly into things like deep learning. Because with deep learning, it is incredible. The things that are being done in deep learning are incredible, but the reality is when you're coming into data science, a lot of what you're going to be doing is slightly more simple than building full deep learning models, because the vast majority of businesses are still trying to solve quite simple problems with their data. I absolutely encourage you to get into deep learning, but just do it after you've set the fundamentals up a little bit, a nice foundation to get into it first. Another pitfall might be people thinking that they're automatically going to go straight into a data science role. Sometimes you have to be realistic and say data science is it's my goal to get into a data science role. But there are a lot of, if you're a data analyst, that's the job title that you have. That doesn't mean that you're not doing data science type work. It's quite a broad term, to be honest. Data science can mean everything and anything. So don't think that data science as a role title is something you have to have. It's just part of a business's data plan, their plan moving forward. So be happy getting a data analyst role. Be really pumped about that and do great work. And if you really want the data science title, then you'll get there. Just start pushing some more of those data science concepts into your team, because every team can use data science concepts to make them better.
Question here from Esan. Should there be any background to participate in your course? Any prerequisites?
So I've tried to make the course accessible for anybody. So we really start at the fundamentals of all of the concepts, whether that's SQL or Python. We have this introductory theory tutorial where we really just say this is what Python is and this is where it came from and this is why it's different to R and C and these other languages and why it's so popular. And then we build up into some more of the basic fundamentals, and then we start really pushing it, and we go from quite a broad high level introduction right up to some really complex stuff. For the machine learning section, I have a structure which I follow, which is we have an introductory theory session where we again introduce the topic that anybody could understand, and then we go straight into Python and we code up a really basic template so you can see the code, so you can start pushing buttons and seeing what happens. And I think that's something which is missing from some other courses, is that you don't get to do something really basic and see it working, so your cogs in your brain can start ticking over. Then we from the basic stencil we go into all of the advanced theory that you need to know, and then we finish off by going back into Python and coding up a more advanced template. And we do that for all the machine learning algorithms that we learn about. It's the same template. And for that final one, we're always solving a problem that came from our mock client that we have in the course, which is ABC Grocery. So they email us every time we learn something new, and they've got a new requirement for us. So everything you learn, you've almost got this template that you could then turn into a portfolio project. So you're learning everything you need to know, but you can sort of transfer that with a little bit more work to sort of smooth the edges and make sure you've got the data preparation in there, which we learn about. But for each of them, we don't need to learn it every time, if you know what I mean. So we learn the fundamentals at the start about data preparation and cleaning, and then we go through and we apply what we need to. But everything's got this focus on application, which I think is really important.
Absolutely. I love the email concept, because that's kind of how the real world works. You're just sitting there doing something, then you get another email for a request. Or do you have any interesting emails that like totally throw people off, or is it all focused around really training?
No, it's kind of like an email from the marketing team saying, hey, we've got this new idea that we want to go after, but we don't know how to do it. Could you advise us on how to do it? And then come back to us with the results, and we can discuss what they mean. And, we go through it. And at the end of the tutorial, where we have, done the advanced sort of coding template, I discuss for a minute or two where I might take that when I discuss that with marketing, to try and keep that level of stakeholder engagement, because it's hard to teach that in a course, exactly how to communicate. But I think just when you've got a classification accuracy score from your model, that's not the end of the road. There needs to be the next steps on what impact does that have, and that sort of discussion or that mindset, I think, is really, really good for people getting into the field to think about how they structure their portfolio projects, how they structure their CV, and how they discuss these projects in interviews. Always think about what's the business impact or what's the value. A classification accuracy of 94% is cool,
Yeah.
But as a hiring manager, I don't care. I want to know, how much money did that make my team? How good did you make me look? What have we brought the business? So I think that level of thing, and that can set you apart from a lot of other candidates.
Question from Laura. So could you give us any advice for people who already have the data science skills but are not in the data science role?
Just try and apply those skills as much as you can. Try and help the business understand where they can be impactful. And if you can show they're impactful and you can show the value, then you're essentially a data scientist, even if you don't have the name, which is why when people are creating their CVs and they've done a lot of data science work, but they've never had a data science title, I still say put data science and whatever else skills as the headline. I'm not saying that I've been a data scientist. I'm just saying I have data science skills. So when people are flicking through your CV, they don't automatically go, not a data scientist, not a data scientist. They see, oh, this guy's got data science skills. When you can get in the seat and have a talk with them or on the phone, you can then talk to them about why you're a good fit for the role. It's just, don't be scared of saying, I've done data science things because I've not had a data science title. Be confident and say, I can do data science stuff. Like talk to me and I can show you.
Anubhav is asking, what's the best interview question anyone has ever asked you?
The best interview question? I can tell you I've had a lot of
bad ones. You can think of all the bad ones, right?
So, yeah, there's one, and I think I've mentioned this before I'm not sure if it was with you, Kate, or not, but I got asked, I won't name the company, but the question was, let me remember. The question was, you live on an island and you have a monster. The monster eats sheep. How big does the island need to be? And in my head, I'm going, oh, Christ, I can't wait to get out of here. Like, I don't want to work for this company. And this was, I don't know how many years ago, maybe 8 or 10 years ago, when those types of questions were quite popular because Google were doing them. So everyone thought they'd try and do them. Yeah. And because I'm originally from New Zealand and I'm from a farming community in New Zealand. And so I didn't grow up on a farm, but I grew up with a lot of friends that were farmers. So in my head, I started talking to them about like paddock rotation and like how you'd get you needed to have a couple of paddocks so the monster could be in here. And then when he'd finished the sheep there, he could go there. And I'm not sure that's what they were asking for. I don't recall. I did not get that role. So I think I missed out on exactly what they were after there. But I don't think those questions are worthwhile, even though I obviously failed that one spectacularly. I don't think those questions give you, as a hiring manager, I don't think they give you much about a candidate. I guess it shows you they can discuss things, but there's better ways to interview for data science candidates, I think.
Are there questions, Andrew, that you think, let's say you're hiring for a role for a data scientist, that you think would be a really good question to ask?
Yeah, so like I said, part of me going out and talking to leaders and hiring managers and recruiters, one of the questions I ask the recruiters is, what's your favorite interview question for data scientists? And not like your favorite one, like the monster one. A question which is useful. And obviously a lot of people had different versions of the same question, I found, and it's very simple. It's walk me through a data science project you've done and explain the impact that it had on the business. Like that in itself it's super simple, but that's all I want to see from you. I want to see that you can tell me what it was you did, and then I want you to tell me that you know about the impact that it had, and then I'm going to follow up with sort of probing questions as you're answering on what you did. And this is a really good thing to have up your sleeve, is what would you have done differently? Or if you had more time, what would you have done differently? Because that shows a really good understanding of what it is you're doing. So I used this and this was the result. If I had more time, or if I could have started again based on everything I learned, I would have gone down this path instead. Because I don't think any project goes perfectly. So if you can kind of have that auxiliary information that you can show that you've got a broad awareness of what you're doing and what the pros and cons of different approaches are, I think that's really good, because a lot of the time in data science, or say machine learning, it's a trade-off between a more complex model that might take longer and might be harder to implement versus something simpler that gives you maybe slightly less accuracy, but it's pretty easy and everyone understands it. And if you can show that you've got that level of common sense and understanding of the pros and cons. I think that's a really powerful thing to show.
This one's from Jessica. What do you think is missing in the market for newbies in data science, right? So talking about opportunities for their preparation, mentoring, things to help them be successful in starting a career in data science.
This is where I was sort of coming from when I created Data Science Infinity. It was trying to bridge that gap between, because I was seeing people coming in and they were so passionate, but they just didn't have the skill set around showing the value you can add with what you're building. I think that's really valuable training. When you're looking through data science applications, you see the same thing over and over again. You get people shouting about the skills they have and the experience they've got with certain tools, and that's awesome. That's what you need. You need those tools, but to sell yourself and to stand out, I think the key thing is thinking more broadly than that, showing that you can, and I've said it 100 times today as well, and I ramble about it throughout my course, is that the idea that data science is more than just tools and skills. Those are so important, but if you need to be showing the value you can add, and if you can show a hiring manager that you're going to come in and solve their problems, then they're going to start wanting you there, because they think, well, you're going to make my life easier and you're going to make money for our company, and that makes me look good. That's what you need to be selling to the hiring manager. So try and find ways to get those skills. Look at others who are good at that. They're good at communicating their ideas. When you're in a role, not thinking about what you're doing. Think about what other people need, like the marketing manager you're working with. What are their KPIs? Can you help them meet their goals? Because that's gonna mean you add value. And when you start adding value and you keep adding value, that's when you get a promotion. That's where you can show to another hiring manager that you are valuable, and therefore you can get paid more. And that's how you progress your career. It's through absolutely getting value from what you're doing, using your unique skills.